Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning roundtable discussion an hour earlier today, so we're glad you're with us. Today, the subject is on man. We are recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, in the United States of America. And thank you all for joining us today. We'll begin with our morning prayer.
I'm reading this morning from page 130 of Watch's Prayers and Arguments. Look away from body to spirit. My being is spiritual. My life, my intelligence are spiritual. My senses are spiritual. My life is hid with Christ in God, and there is no other existence. The Christ, or truth, the manifestation of God, does supersede my belief that my true being, that real life and intelligence are in matter. We have immortality now, not shall have. There is no fear, conscious or unconscious, that can restrain the power of divine love to heal. I was born free, not in bondage to anything or to anyone, for principle leads me forever. Infinity includes only the man who is well and all he needs. There is no mind to put forth a law of reversal. Love governs all, and there is only one governor. Mortal mind cannot make a law to reverse God's law, for God's law is not reversible.
Wonderful, thank you. Before we do the watching point, Gary's going to make an announcement about
Our good friend David Keaston, whom some of you know, has just finished and published a book. The book is about the two witnesses, for the first Christ and the second Christ. It's a book that he has felt needed to be written for a long time, and it's quite good.
And by the second Christ, it's the first Christ and the woman in the apocalypse. And it's a prophecy, all of the prophecies for Christ Jesus, and then all of the prophecies for the woman in the apocalypse.
Exactly. So it's quite it's quite important, because it documents prophecies in the Bible, not only prophecies of Jesus, but also prophecies of Christian Science. And then he talks about the resistance to both of these coming of the Christ, the resistance, of course, that we are well aware of to Jesus, and then today, the resistance to Christian Science. So it's quite an important book.
Some of our people proofed it. The title of it is The Second Coming of Christ. What did Jesus say? The Christ in Bible prophecy, God's two great lights, two witnesses, Genesis through Revelation. And we do have it listed on our website.
Yeah, if you go to the store page and scroll down to the bottom, there's information about it.
He said he wrote it for Christians in general, but it's a good one for Christian Scientists as well. So does anyone who proofed it or anyone want to say anything about it? He really prayed over it. Took a long time for him to get all this information together. Took him a while to write it. He put his heart into it. So,
but he's also in a unique position to write this story, to write this book, having been a Christian Scientist all his life, and also having been a publisher and seller of books. He has read extensively a lot of books on Christian Science. So he's known a lot of the people who have written books about Mrs. Eddy and about Christian Science. So he's has the library, and he has the background and the understanding of science to properly put all of this in perspective. So he's done a really good job, and it's an excellent book.
He also wrote the book The Healer, which many of you are familiar with. We have that recorded and online. And he is the website
ChristianScience.org.
ChristianScience.org. Is that his bookstore?
Yeah,
Healing Unlimited.
Thank you.
Healing Unlimited.
Thank you. Healing Unlimited. Many of you are familiar with that. That's where we get most of our books from him. He's based in Texas now, I guess. So Healing Unlimited. Thank you. All right. So if any of you are interested in getting that book, it's for sale now. And what's the price? Of $20 or something?
26 or something.
Yeah, something.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
No, it's paperback. It's properly bound. He is self-published.
Yeah,
It costs you a lot more to go through and do it yourself. So.
All right, Karen.
Could you just repeat the title and author for this book?
The Second Coming of Christ. What did Jesus say? The Christ in Bible Prophecy, God's Two Great Lights, Two Witnesses, Genesis through Revelation. And the author is David Keyston, Keyston.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right,
Okay.
Karen.
Watch number 143. Watch lest you believe that the spiritual idea, which is the real nature of man, can be lost, contaminated, or rendered inoperative because of any human condition, happening, or evidence. Once a Christian Science lecturer said, quote, "Never believe that even your own folly can indefinitely postpone the destiny God has in store for you," end quote. In Matthew 4, verse 7, Jesus says, quote, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God," end quote. If the Lord is God, transformed into idea or man, then our task is to realize that this Christ nature in ourselves or others cannot be lost, that it cannot be defiled or even tempted by any earthly suggestions or conditions. Mrs. Eddy once said, quote, "Error says we are sick or discouraged. We don't say it. It is error talking about itself. If we admit it, we have accepted a lie. Truth says, I have perfect eyes, perfect heart, perfect limbs, etc. All there is to me is like God, like perfection. We should discard mortal mind judgment and pray for the Christ mind," end quote. Once a woman had an internal displacement. She was a Christian Scientist, but she was greatly tempted to submit to an operation because it seemed the only way to get relief. She started for her practitioner's office in order to tell her what she planned to do. But on the way, she became so grateful for Christian Science that she determined to live up to its teachings to the best of her ability, even if she were never healed of the physical disorder. And that's from a Christian Science Sentinel article, August 15th, 1931. This lady experienced her healing right then and there. Her declaration was really a determination to defend her recognition of the fact that she was a spiritual idea and reflected God, against being belittled or interfered with by any false testimony or human suggestion. Mrs. Eddy once declared, quote, I must know that the definition of man in science and health applies to me. I am that spiritual man. I am God's image and likeness, reflecting a full, perfect image of life, mind, action, etc., not under material laws or limitations. End quote.
Thank you. I love this one. And any comments?
I think What is Man, page 475, should remind us of who we are. I think it's one that I must read it more often than I do.
Thank you. That's what I felt too. I mean, you could read that just like the Sermon on the Mount every day, every week. Because when we think of ourselves as the image and likeness of God, this explains what that image and likeness of God is. And she goes in quite detail, and it's just wonderful. And when you read it, I always tell people this. You say, I am not matter. I am not made up of brain, blood, bones, and other material elements. The scriptures inform us that I am made in the image and likeness of God. You bring it home, you apply it to yourself. It's an incredible definition. Yes, I agree, Florence. Use it more often. Get it into your being, who and what you are. So important to know who you are as God's image and likeness. And yeah, that quote from her saying that, we must know the definition of man in science and health applies to me. All the time she says man, which is often, she's talking about you and everyone, all of us.
I like the woman's
I
resolve,
Go ahead, Chardell.
her resolve that no matter what people said, no matter what it looks like, she was going to stick to what she knew in science.
Mrs. Eddy?
No, the woman who was healed.
Okay, the healer. Yes,
Sorry.
yes,
And, she was healed.
yes. The stick-to-itiveness that we all must have in this, not bumped here, there, and everywhere, but to know the truth.
Yeah, she remembered her love.
Yes.
It's like we were talking about last week, I think it was, Jesus' prayers were deep, conscientious protests of truth. And that's what I thought of when I was reading this watch and reading the definition of man. That is, the deepest and most conscientious protest of truth of what we are.
Thank you. Yes.
And I love hearing just the gratitude for so many, not only healings, all the time after I knew about this wonderful divine metaphysics, but the healings of things that were said to be incurable, like my mom's diabetes that was given up by the doctors, and so many other healings, but not only for that, but for the protection and the actual preventive, not even to get to need healing, but to be healthy and well. And this is the science of the Christ, how amazing it is. So I just wanted to add that to that great healing.
Thank you. Who else?
I think
I love
Florence?
No, the sentence is so powerful. Man is incapable of sin, sickness, and death. Just to think that all the time, that's really powerful for me.
Yes. That's it. That's it. That's the door to anything else. Who else was trying to speak?
What I like.
Who hasn't spoken?
Well, I love the quote from Matthew 4:7 when Jesus said, "Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God." And it says, God transformed into idea or man. Then our task is to realize that this Christ nature in ourselves and others cannot be lost. And it reminded me of the statement, God expresses in man the infinite idea.
if we hold to that, we know that our oneness cannot be separated. We can never be separated from God, and it is our task to recognize that. I just love that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't remember reading where Mrs. Eddy says this, just in this way, that's in this watching point, where she says, error says we are sick or discouraged. We don't say it. It is error talking about itself. But then if we admit it, we've accepted the lie. So, when you get thoughts that you're sick or discouraged or depressed or whatever, that's error talking about itself. It has no power unless you accept that lie. And then you're not even saying it. God's certainly not saying it. You're not saying it either. Error is just having a little conversation with itself. And then truth says, I have perfect eyes, perfect heart, perfect limbs. You can add to that list. All there is to me is like God, like perfection. We should discard mortal mind judgment and pray for the Christ mind. And this is one of the major precepts on Christian Science. There's only the one mind, and that's why we declare it for ourselves every morning. We don't have to listen to error talking to itself, okay? Turn that channel off. That's all static. And only listen to what God is telling you. I just love the way it's worded in that. We're not even saying it. It's just error chit-chatting to itself, so shut it off.
Yeah, because we have a choice, don't we? When error is talking about itself, to itself, we have a choice. We can either join the conversation or we can handle it, deny its reality and truth. So what did Eve do when the serpent started having a conversation?
Listened and talked back.
Yeah, she joined the conversation, and that was the mistake, and that's why that part of the book of Genesis is a myth. It's not the truth about God's creation.
Some of you have told me where you live, there are no other Christian scientists or whatever. So sometimes you have to go out with people who are not Christian scientists, and the conversation goes into negativity, sometimes what we call an organ recital about all their problems. Now, and they say, well, they don't know what to do. They try to change the subject, or they, a lot of just sit and listen, denying it mentally. But, I remember years and years ago when I would be in that situation, can't remember. I think I just came upon this myself. I decided you be proactive. I would look things up to talk about. The world is full of so many interesting things. Why sit there and hear about people's problems? So I would take note cards about interesting things to talk about. And then I would change the subject, and I had all these facts and things to say, and make it as lively and interesting as possible. And even if you have to say, listen, I find this conversation depressing. Can we talk about something more cheerful, please? For instance, you could even take like the virtue medicine we've been talking about. And look it up, find out, oh, look, if you express love or laughter or gratitude
or courage.
Yeah, courage, generosity, all these things, you'll feel better. But turn that conversation around. Why not take the initiative? Don't sit there like a helpless victim, glued to the wall, which is what people feel like, I know. But no, you change it and have interesting things. Even if you talk about the Hubble telescope, talk about interesting things. The world is, what is a little poem you learned as a child? The world is so full of interesting things. We all should be happy as kings, or something like that. So make it an interesting, worthwhile time with your friends. Don't just sit and listen to Era for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever. And I'm sure they will be greatly blessed. Take the offensive. We have it. It's the authority of Christ, and you will bless them and yourself.
Yeah, that watching point 496, that we have to be the aggressors, not mere defenders of the faith.
Yes. And it's such a waste of time when you think of all the good things. It's just like, when there are these stupid, worse than stupid movies out, when there could be so many interesting movies about so many interesting things that have gone on. And more people are making them now, thank God. But why fill your thought up with all this literally garbage when there's so much good, the enduring the good and the true. Okay, Chardell, because what Chardell found has to go with the definition of man in the recapitulation. And you didn't write this, but it's by Bicknell Young.
Oh, sorry, I have it on mine.
Okay, well, it wasn't on mine. Anyway,
right.
Go ahead.
I put in from citation 1 in Science and Health, man is the image of love, and I thought God's image by Bicknell Young. Mrs. Eddy says in Science and Health, I'll read this. I wasn't going to read it, but mortal mind sees what it believes as certainly as it believes what it sees. Wow. Okay. Every phase of mortality is an illusion which is not real. In fact, an illusion does not include anything real. It is powerless when it is understood just what it is, nothing. In truth, all is infinite mind and its infinite manifestation, for God is all in all. Science and Health. Man must remember what he is and who he is and what he does. Man is the image and likeness of God. Man is the manifestation, expression, reflection of divine truth, life, and love. And man manifests, expresses, reflects divine truth, life, and love, just as God does. So too man is and does just that. As God is the great I am, man has nothing to worry about and nothing to be afraid of. Fear, God has given you dominion, control, so use it. In fact, it is God's dominion and control you actually use, and for this reason, you always have more than enough power from on high, which always makes you master of every circumstance and situation. Work for the glory of God, speaking with authority in His name, and you will be obeyed because He must be obeyed. You will see the Christ idea gain an ascendancy until the divine light glows in, around, and through all.
Thank you. It's a good description of seeing yourself and others as the image and likeness of God. And that definition, again, I love to think that you are the image of love. So don't tell me this. You don't know how to love, or you don't feel love, or you don't know love. You're denying God. You are the image of love. It's all around you. It's in you. It's through you. And you've got to know and think on this, for heaven's sakes. I read a good article recently about lonely, and solitude. And this person who found herself all alone, was feeling lonely, especially in the evenings. She learned to think of it not as being lonely, but as a precious time of solitude where she could think and pray and be quiet, read interesting books and meditate. And she turned that whole situation around. She was actually looking forward to the solitude she was feeling. And we all need solitude, alone with God, and to keep it that way. I know, I think it's in this month, the Liberator's coming out very soon, and it's wonderful on the third commandment. And I think Florence has an article about what Mrs. Eddy says. Alone, yes, but lonely, never, what Mrs. Eddy says. So we're always the Father. Take that time and let it be a precious time. We're never really truly alone. We've always got God right with us. It's all a matter of how you look at things.
I just want to say that there's been times in my past being around people, like actually with people, that's when I felt the most alone.
Thank
Being
you.
in those places, not good or it's not your right place.
Absolutely. You can be in a crowd of people and feel very lonely. It really has nothing to do with anything. It's always your oneness with the Father. That's what matters. And if you know that, you're never alone.
Yeah. And the quote read before is so wonderful because in science and health, we find so many of them saying in truth or in science. Man is perfect or man is the reflection. And I have learned to pay attention to that in truth, in science, because we can see and live those things if we know that truth. And if we understand that it is in science, not in the lie, that these things are possible.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, Mrs. Evans used to always make that distinction too. You have to be in the science, you have to be in that consciousness, which takes, prayerful work to stay there. It's the most precious thing we have. Don't just toss it out all the time, but guard it and love it and appreciate it, and it will grow that close oneness with the Father, your spiritual sense where you can hear his voice always. Now, along with this lesson this week, I have been studying The Practice of Christian Science by Bicknell Young, which is really excellent. He's written 2 articles, I guess you could say, on practicing Christian Science. This one is called The Practice of Christian Science. And I just wanted to read a few things from it because he brings out on how you stay in that image and likeness of God. And we just finished in our lessons all the synonyms of God, which is again your image and likeness, life, truth, love, all that those mean is what you are. Certainly the definition of God, all knowing, all acting, all hearing, all the things he is, you are. So Bicknell Young writes, the first part of our practice is going to be waking up in the morning in the conscious realization of our oneness with God. Again, we talk about it a lot. First thing in the morning. And then health is more than the absence of disease. Health is the eternal state of spiritual being. Health is your oneness with the Father because God is, of course, healthy, if you want to think of it that way, but he certainly has nothing to do with sin, disease, and death. And when you're one with him, you won't either.
Science and health.
Science and health. And then this I found very interesting in working in this truth. Let us forget that heaven and earth are 2 different places. They are the same place. Earth is our mortal concept of heaven. Heaven is our real awareness of the earth. In other words, heaven is the earth correctly understood. And this is why we can have heaven on earth. This is why Mrs. Eddy says in Things to Handle Daily that our knowledge of truth isn't just the gateway to heaven, it is heaven. The more you know of truth, the more you'll have of heaven on earth. And then, now, 2 things you must carry with you from morning to night and from night to morning. And they are the words right identification and reinterpretation. Reinterpret, let's see. Right identification means God appearing as individual life. Sin, disease, and death are nothing more or less than God being wrongly interpreted by us. So the next word, right after the word identification, is reinterpretation. Right identification means the one appearing as many, or God life appearing as individual being. And then reinterpretation, which means looking right at sick, sinning, human, dying men and reinterpreting them to see how, inasmuch as God is all, this is part, a phase or aspect of the allness of God, which is being misseen, coming to you as false suggestion, and that you must reinterpret. And, that's one thing I know Florence is always talking about, your right identification. You have to know yourself as God's child, right?
Yes.
And then, yes, go ahead, Florence.
I mean, I find that so crucial because until we know that, and Mrs. Eddy says it herself, if we don't know that you're God's child, what are you trying to demonstrate? It's in miscellaneous writing somewhere. I don't remember the page. But really, if we know who we are spiritual, immortal, perfect now, not will be, but right now, and we carry that with us all the time, it really just shows us our inseparability from God. It's impossible. Therefore, we cannot, when sickness, the thought of or the suggestion of sickness comes up, we are able to say absolutely not here. Mm-mm.
Thank you. Okay, then now the two things you must carry with you from morning to night and night to morning are the words right identification and reinterpretation. Reinterpret everything you see, hear, taste, or touch and smell. Reinterpret it back all to its original state. That is Godhood. Be sure that you practice right identification, knowing that all that appears to you is God appearing as the individual man, woman, or child. God appearing as the plant, animal, crops, and then knowing what the human eye sees, what the human ear hears, is a false picture presented by this thing I call hypnotism or suggestion. The same that presents the two train tracks or car tracks coming together, or presents the sky as hitting the mountains. Be sure you realize and are willing not to go so absolute that you won't interpret what is appearing to you on the scene. So here we are. You see something that doesn't seem to be of God, you look past it and see this is God appearing to you, and it seems to be out of focus. So you know the truth and get it back into focus. Jesus beheld in science the perfect man who appeared to him where sinning mortal man appears to mortals. In this perfect man, the Savior saw God's own likeness. And this correct view of man healed the sick. So I think that's a good thing to think about as far as knowing our image and likeness. Those two words, right identification and then reinterpretation. If it seems to not be what God makes. Because if we declare that God is all in all, I mean that's what he's saying here, right? God is all in all. What is not God? And if it's not God, we're just seeing it, we're misinterpreting the truth about it. Whether it's a bird, a plant, a person, whatever it is. And this is our. Go ahead.
No, I just love the fact of this, Jesus, the correct view of man, the correct view of man. It's so important. The correct view of man. That's what healed the sick. So.
Yes. I know. It is so simple, so wonderful. That one statement, I think about it, I work with that a lot. So anyway, that article, it's got a lot in there, Bignell Young, about the practice of Christian Science and just how to do it and how to maintain your image and likeness and the image and likeness of others. Okay, Jeremy, the golden text.
Isaiah, cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of?
Thank you. And Nancy, you want to share with us?
Yeah, it really captured me. And so as I was thinking and studying this passage, I found a post back from 2018 on our forum, which I found very helpful to me as I'm trying to turn away from material human sense of man and striving to see that spiritual reality of the man that God created. So it was written, cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of? And the word accounted means esteemed or considered, regarded or valued. I feel this is a good check to ask myself, how much time and consideration do I give to this so-called mortal self? Am I always concerned about how it is feeling or looking or sleeping? Do I worry about diet or exercise or beliefs of aging? This instruction from Isaiah tells me to stop all this, to cease ye. How much infinitely better to dwell upon my spiritual nature, to be thinking about the things of God, to be knowing I am his perfect reflection, to know we are all his children. God is the one and only creator, to know that the government is on his shoulders, to know I am ageless, diseaseless, deathless. The Bible and Science and Health gives us so many wonderful truths to identify myself with, and in so doing, I am enriching and expanding the kingdom of God within me. Spirit is God, and man his image and likeness. Therefore, man is not material, he is spiritual. That's from Science and Health, page 468. I just felt this was a really great reminder to keep my thoughts on the right side. And I loved, as Eddie writes in miscellaneous writings, in proportion as mortals turn from this mortal and material dream to the true sense of reality, establishing life will be found to be the only life.
Thank you.
I really liked it. It's an eye opener.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, how much time are you spending on this? And of course, we see it everywhere if you're not careful. Even in another article by Bigda Young about age, he talks about his, I guess it was his association coming together. And he said, I know you're all thinking, oh, look at that one. She looks a lot older than last year. So, we got to stop with this. Yeah, watch your thought. What side are you on? What Mrs. Eddy talks about the scale, so make it the scale on the right side. Not be thinking all these negative thoughts, and they do creep in.
Well, this is really useful for both self-identification and also for reinterpretation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because cease from man, start with yourself, who am I
To be accounted of. Yeah.
to be accounted of, and then see the rest of mankind as God's creation as well. Because you can't love others if you don't feel God's love for you. You can't see others correctly if you don't know who you are correctly.
Thank you. And Carrie sent 2 articles on this golden text, both by Ella Hogue, which I'm going to share some things from. The first one was called Dominion. In the Bible, we learn that God gave man dominion. And, that's also in our responsive reading. It is therefore a faculty which he must have intended all his children to express equally. Hence, the desire to possess and use it must be natural and right. Since dominion is a gift of God, it must be like him. It must partake of his qualities and of his alone. All Christians unite in attributing power to God, naming him omnipotence, all power. Then any true dominion which men may exercise must of necessity be that which is the reflection of the power of God good. And then in proportion as one awakens to the great necessity of taking his own responsibility in regard to his thinking and approving thereby his own mental dominion, he will cease to fear false mental influence. He will understand that he has before him the goal of complete purification, which Jesus had attained when he said, "The prince of this world cometh, and hath nothing in me." He will see that it will make no difference to him how many mortal minds may be claiming power to induce him to think evilly. If he has already proved the undesirability and consequent unreality of the evil thought presented, it will not tempt him for a moment from his allegiance to good. And if the thought presented is an error, which he has not yet proved unreal, he will be grateful for the opportunity to handle the error and so prove yet again his own dominion. We know our dominion is within, and it is our thoughts. We control what we think. We have that ability. Those pages 390 to 393. So, and that's it. And we can't blame others or other circumstances or anything like that. And I love that. I mean, can you say that about yourself? The prince of this world cometh and hath nothing in me. What's the prince of this world?
False suggestions.
Thank you. Yeah. The tempter, the liar, Satan, the devil.
Coveting.
Carrie's favorite.
Materialism, sensuality. Believe that there's life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. There is such a thing as good matter. Desirable matter.
People,
personality.
Yeah.
Personality.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so grateful for Mrs. Evans because she really blasted this idea, because it still seems to snag Christian Scientists that you have to have this ideal little life. Your perfect little house, your perfect little children, your perfect little this, your perfect little that, and then you're demonstrating Christian Science. Well, that is total, BS. That is not demonstrating Christian Science. That's demonstrating nice matter. So congratulations. That could be a byproduct of living a good life. Yes, it certainly can be, but that's what it is. It's subordinate to God. It's not the goal. It's not the thing you lust after. It's not the thing you covet after in other people, because I hear this. Oh, I'm having a hard time, but this Christian Scientist, she has a really good life and good little children, and they're all just perfect, and they had a beautiful wedding the other day, and my life just stinks. Well, good grief, people. I'm telling you. And I thought that too. And when I got to Mrs. Evans, she just ripped the living daylights out of that. It was very refreshing, ultimately. That is not how we judge people. That is not how we see people. That has nothing to do with anything. Unless it's been a demonstration, and if it has, it comes with blood, sweat, and tears.
And humility.
And everything else. Then okay. But other than that, if it's just building up of matter, then it means nothing.
Put you to sleep.
Put you to sleep. And it makes, I'm Chevy Chase and you're not. She used to like to quote that too. That means I'm something special, but you're not. And that is so obnoxious. That is so obnoxious. And that has gotten into the ranks of Christian Science. So I hear.
Mm-hmm. Or Christian scientists who claim to be Christian Scientists.
Go ahead.
I think it was maybe 2 weeks lessons ago. It was a short little blurb in one of our Bible citations, and I haven't been able to forget it, in the sense it said, like, there was trouble happening in the city, and the wise old or poor man saved the city.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking about that, and it was like, they said they described him as poor. And, we were just talking about the wealth and all these things. Well, those people didn't save the city.
No, they didn't. And it's only the poor in spirit, right, that hunger and seek. And if you're so happy with all your material living, then you're not going to hunger and seek after God. It's
can you
not.
without God?
Pardon me?
I said, how can you without God save any city?
Yes. So don't fall into that trap, please. So, and ask yourself, I mean, in what ways the prince of this world hath nothing in me? And build on it. So it does, though it can't find a hook in you. And that's why I always quote this, the Dixon letter, only the pure in heart will see God, yes. And also will survive the latter days. Okay, so and then another on that topic was also called Staying in the Truth, Healing with Truth by Ella Hogue. Cease from acknowledging the deceiver over the truth. It is truth which heals. It is truth which we are to learn to know. That it is truth to which we are to cling insistently. That it is truth we are to prove as the whole only healing power. But I love that. Cease from acknowledging the deceiver over truth. Why do you give all this talk to the deceiver rather than to the truth? The truth is what we cling to. And then
I just wanted to say that's
Sure.
one thing I love about the story of the Shunammite woman is I just always think, you know, her thought was, if someone's malpracticing, it's not me. 'Cause I know,
Yes,
so.
yes, it's such a beautiful story, and that's what she's clung to, right? She clung to it. And then this was a beautiful article too, Marching to Music by Ethel Whitcomb. No one can truly say that he is faithful to his duty or is doing his part unless he recognizes as he works that only joyous service is acceptable to him, of whom the scripture says, he will joy over thee with singing. And that was in the lesson, Zephaniah. To reflect then our joyous Creator, we must manifest the songfulness, the vitality, the animation of spirit as we work, until love becomes a substance of the service, whatever it may be. And then, when cruel stones of misrepresentation, hate, and revenge were hurled at Mrs. Eddy, she could hear above the tumult because her heart was beating for mankind, the holy strains of victorious love. And with her hand in God's, she marched on alone with steadfast step. And lo, the race was lifted up. He who follows in her selfless way cooperates with boundless being and draws humanity nearer to the Christ. He honors God as he marches on, responding to the angelic chorus which those purified of self have heard in every age. That's marching to the beat of the drum. That's the drum we must hear, God's, because you will have all kinds of things hurled at you, as did our leader, but she never stopped. She heard the music, the drum. She kept going. She didn't flail and, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I'm going to give up now. No. So must we hear that angelic chorus, those voices on high. Have your heart full of joy and love for mankind and for what we've been given. And then that reminded me of this. I love this poem. It's in Miscellaneous Writings 106. Christian science and Christian scientists must have a history. And if I could write the history in poor parody on Tennyson's grand verse, it would read thus. Traitors to the right of them, MDs to the left of them, priestcraft in front of them, volleyed and thundered into the jaws of hate, out through the door of love, on to the blessed above, marched the 100. Mrs. Eddy said, even when her time, when there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people in the movement, she would look out, and what would she see?
Not one Christian Scientist.
Yeah, one time she said she didn't see one Christian Scientist.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
So if we have 100, hallelujah.
Yes.
March the 100. Be one of that 100. And yes, all of these things all around us, volleying and thundering, but we keep marching. All right, I'm going to end now with a Max Sunaway poem and then a beautiful article from Carrie on the Shunammite woman. This is entitled Thoughts by Max Sunaway. Not what we do or say, but what we think determines what we are. Within the realm of high and noble thought soars mankind's highest star. There is no deed or valor, might or right, without the thought behind. No work of love was ever wrought or taught, but started in the mind. No king, dictator, or president defines what thoughts we choose to think. No prison bars can hold or stay the thought that is with God a link. Would you rule over all that life can bring? Be joyous, strong, and free. Guard then the thoughts of every hour, for these are life and destiny. Right. And then Gary.
And this is from an article by Oliver Bowles entitled Firm Adherence to Truth. And it refers to the story of the Shunammite woman. And he writes, the answer, "It is well," is clearly understood as a simple, positive statement that no death, no parting, no bereavement can exist, even in belief, where the light of God's healing and saving presence shines through the clear prism of one made pure by a close and intelligent communion with the one indestructible life.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
you.
Thank you.